H recently celebrated 25 years in WWE, a quarter century that saw him morph from a snobbish blue blood to a smutty degenerate, to a jean jacket wearing badass, to everybody's favourite boss with a buzz cut. A legend in his own right, the former, well, everything, let's be honest, since there's no accolade the game hasn't added to his impressive resume. Triple H had an in-ring career that ranks up there with the best and most dominant ever. He may be a skilled craftsman in the ring and have the look and the charisma necessary to make it to and stay at the top, but he also had one other thing to help him out immeasurably. No, I'm not talking about him settling down with the boss's daughter, because let's face it, that was a massive gamble that could have torpedoed his career faster than you can say divorce. No, I'm talking about favourable booking, particularly the fact that Triple H has won a lot more matches than he has lost, especially those on television and pay-per-view. Yes, he's took an L when going up against other megastars like The Rock, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels and Brock Lesnar, but he's beaten just about everybody else there is to beat, leading to accusations of him holding down others just to make himself look better. That can quickly be debunked by exploring this rogues gallery list of wrestlers that Triple H has lost to, some of whom are truly astonishing. I'm Sam from Cultaholic, and these are 10 shocking WWE stars who beat Triple H. Join us! Number 10, Reverend Devon. With the supposed reign of terror just around the corner, Triple H did a rare job on SmackDown for Reverend Devon, recently emancipated from partner Bubba Ray in the initial WWE draft. The game had not long lost the undisputed title to comeback King Hulk Hogan, and was back to feuding with Chris Jericho, who he'd beaten for the title at WrestleMania 18, but had lost to 2 weeks earlier on SmackDown. Wow! Triple H losing twice on television just months after his heroic return from injury and weeks after his Mania triumph? What did he do? Forget to open the car door for Stephanie or something? Those tuning into Smackers on May 9th, 2002 would have likely assumed that the cerebral assassin was going to handily destroy the Reverend, but that is not how things shook out. During the match, the preacher opened up a cut on Triple H's forehead as the commentators repeatedly emphasized how he wasn't 100%. The former Dudley Boy also had a little help in the form of Deacon Batista, looking to impress in his debut and making himself useful by running interference at ringside. In the end, it took an interfering Y2J in his lovely sparkling pink pants to clock his foe over the head with the Rev's collection box, leading to the unlikely result. Number 9, D'Lo Brown. A few years and about 40 pounds of solid muscle earlier, Triple H was more likely to be found fighting over WWE's secondary championships than the main prize. Even as the leader of D-Generation X Volume 2, Hunter wasn't quite at the level to tangle with the Stone Colds and Undertakers of the world, but he did have a lengthy and fruitful feud with The Rock, also looking to break that darn glass ceiling over the Intercontinental title. A key moment in that dispute came when Trips defended the European title against The Rock's Nation of Domination pal D'Lo Brown on the July 20th, 1998 episode of Raw. Now, D'Lo was no slouch, some might even call him the real deal now, but he was still quite a bit further down the pecking order compared with the DX Foreman. Their match was solid, as you'd expect from two pros of their caliber. It did, however, veer off into shenanigans, as you would expect from a match of this era. Chyna and The Rock, who were both positioned at ringside, got involved before Mark Henry wandered out and provided the distraction, allowing the Great One to nail a rock bottom and hand Brown the title. 4 years later on Raw, Triple H beat D'Lo Brown while blindfolded, proving once again who the smartest and toughest wrestler of all time is. Number 8, Jeff Hardy. Nowadays, Jeff Hardy is a bona fide main eventer, a former WWE champion who'll go down in history as one of the most popular WWE superstars of all time. Back in 2001, he was still popular but relatively unproven, especially at a main event level, as he'd only really been tagging with his brother Matt to that point. When the Hardys engaged in a brief dispute with the two-man power trip of Steve Austin and Triple H, they, along with Lita, got their little alternative emo backsides handed to them. Though the rainbow-haired warrior did get an Intercontinental title shot against the game out of it. Colliding on the April 12, 2001 SmackDown, Jeff and Trips had themselves a canny little bout where Hardy stepped up his game, no pun intended. but the champ never really looked in any real danger as he controlled the pace. Frustrated with his inability to put the charismatic enigma away, the game shoved down referee Timmy White, giving Matt an opportunity to run in and blast him with a chair, which led to a swanton bomb and the shock title change. Trips got the title back on the very next episode of Raw just days later, but it wouldn't be the last time he did the honors for Jeff, putting him over again in 2007. Number 7. Shelton Benjamin. The 2004 draft was a funny old thing. Triple H was sent to SmackDown, but in a desperate bid to get him back, Raw GM Eric Bischoff traded the Dudley Boys and Booker T. Let me do a quick bit of maths for you here. 2 Dudley Boys plus Booker T equals 1 Triple H. Got it. Somewhat forgotten amongst all the bidding for the game was Shelton Benjamin's move to the Red brand, splitting up the world's greatest tag team and forcing the excellent amateur practitioner to try his luck solo. An immediate test was Benjamin's first match on Raw, a main event against Triple H on March 29th. After a long back and forth contest where Shelton emerged as a star, a ringside fracas between Ric Flair and Chris Benoit caught the Cerebral Assassin's attention long enough for Benjamin to nail a Stinger Splash and roll him up for the 3. Playing off the improbable win, Shelton got a count-out victory over Triple H the next week, a disqualification win a few months later, and took him to the absolute limit in a beat-the-clock challenge match on the last Raw of the year. 2004 was a breakout year for the Gold Standard, and his series of matches with Triple H had a lot to do with legitimizing him in the eyes of the fans. Number 6. The Stalker. As a mark for vintage NWA from the 70s and 80s, I doubt a still developing Hunter Hearst Helmsley would have minded putting over Barry Windham. Windham, one of the most underrated workers of all time who never quite fulfilled his enormous potential because he apparently wasn't really that arsed, was a former NWA World Champion and 4 Horsemen member, so it's likely the Greenwich Blue Blood looked up to him. Trips might have had an issue doing honours for the Stalker, however. The Stalker was Windham repackaged as some sort of camo-wearing, face-painted hunter gimmick given to him because he happened to mention he liked outdoor pursuits during an interview with Vince McMahon. Note to self, don't ever tell Vince McMahon about any of my hobbies should I ever finally get an interview. The Stalker came out strong, however, getting a decent little push in late '96, beating the likes of The Goon and TL Hopper. Look, that was considered a decent push back then, okay? His biggest scalp was Helmsley's, beating him with a superplex on the September 23rd Raw. Hunter was perhaps still serving some of his punishment for his part in the infamous MSG curtain call, as before that night, he was far better protected on television. Number 5. Curtis Axel. The son of the late great Mr. Perfect was earmarked for superstardom by WWE higher-ups, but his career initially stuttered due to his torrid time on NXT, rubbish ring name, and forgettable run as a member of Nexus. Re-debuting under the new name of Curtis Axel and paired up with Paul Heyman as his manager in the spring of 2013, his career received a big boost as he said goodbye to the minor leagues and set his sights on climbing the ladder on Raw. Paul Levesque, as an influential force in talent relations, saw great things in Axel's future and predicted he could be one of the men to carry the company in years to come. History has shown that it didn't quite work out that way, but Trips did his part to elevate the upstart regardless. First, the game lost to Axel via knockout when he received a storyline concussion during a match on the May 20th Raw, which was Axel's first match back after another spell in developmental. Then a few weeks and a few more wins later, Axel beat Triple H not once, but twice on the June 10th Raw. First by disqualification, and then by forfeit, although it was admittedly more of an angle than a real match. Axel never pinned his opponent or made him submit, but the 3 victories, however he got them, gave him some bragging rights nonetheless. Number 4. Test. Another wrestler who holds multiple victories over our man is Test. Test. I'm talking about Test. I mean, Trips did secretly marry Stephanie McMahon behind Test's back, so he probably felt like the real winner, all things considered. It was actually earlier in the evening of the infamous wedding episode, before the hijacked ceremony went down, that Test got his first victory over Triple H. The lanky Canadian was given a match with the King of Kings as a wedding present from Vince McMahon. Stacking the deck against Triple H was the fact that someone in a truly chilling Vince McMahon mask was refereeing the contest. His dodgy officiating causing the game to go after him, giving an opening to Shane McMahon to run in with the chair, setting up the big elbow from the groom-to-be with a quick count thrown in for good measure. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think that the stocky, uncoordinated man in the Vince mask was actually Vince McMahon himself. We're through the looking glass here, people! Anyway, a couple of years later, and with the ruined wedding a distant memory, Test, then a member of the Un-Americans, got another win over Triple H on the May 30th, 2002 edition of SmackDown, securing the pin thanks to interference from both Lance Storm and The Undertaker. Number 3, Jim Ross. Oh, good. I was wondering how long it'd take before we got to the ritual humiliation of Jim Ross. Embarrassing WWE's one-time EVP of Talent Relations was a favourite pastime of Vince McMahon, one that his son-in-law clearly inherited if his match with good old JR on the April 18th, 2005 episode of Raw is anything to go by. And this was no ordinary match. This was a no disqualification main event in Madison Square Garden. I mean, we're better than the world's most famous arena to play a nice little rib on one of your faithful, long-standing employees. The game pounded the announcer for what seemed like an eternity, busting him open with a potato shot that was very out of character by a performer who's usually such a safe pair of hands. Not that I'm insinuating anything, of course, I'm flat out telling you that he decked him on purpose. Jerry Lawler, either concerned for his pal or as bored by the alleged contest as the rest of MSG, tried to intervene on JR's behalf, but promptly got his crown kicked in. Eventually, Batista, who was supposed to be in the Oklahoman's corner, but sauntered into the arena in a limo about 3 minutes before the show went off air like a true superstar, evened things up with a steel chair, draping a half-dead JR on top of his former mentor for the win. Good God almighty. Number 2, The Godfather. One of the great things about the Attitude Era, besides the swearing and the big boobies you'd enjoy on the TV every week, was seemingly every character, no matter how minor, having something going on. From the main event to the opening match, everybody on the card had an angle or a storyline or something happening for them, and it worked wonders for performers like The Godfather. He may not have been challenging for the WWE title, but he could still realistically fight the WWE Champion, which he did when he met Triple H on the March 16th, 2000 episode of SmackDown. A couple of weeks before the game was due to defend the belt against The Rock, Mick Foley and Big Show at WrestleMania, he went up against the conductor of the Ho Train in what really should have been a routine win. Interference from Show and his cornerman Shane McMahon saw the short match go in favour of the Pimp Daddy, although Trips did kick out on 3.1, so it looked like he didn't really lose. But he did. Unfortunately, the bout was non-title, robbing the world of Charles Wright headlining the Showcase of the Immortals. And number 1, the Brooklyn Brawler. So far, we've seen Triple H looking at the lights for legends, promising upstarts and even a commentator, but of all the wrestlers to score a W over the Cerebral Assassin, the Brooklyn Brawler is probably the most shocking. The veteran was basically a career enhancement talent, getting paid to do the honors for everybody else on a nightly basis, and by the time he met Triple H on the July 6, 2000 episode of SmackDown, he was older and had transitioned into a backstage role with the company. The New York native was put back into the ring to help further the storyline between Triple H and Chris Jericho. See, Trips had to beat Brawler and Kaientai in an elimination handicap match in order to get a crack at Y2J a few days later on Raw. While Papa H had a little issue of disposing of Funaki and Taka Michinoku, timely interference from Jericho gave the Brooklyn Brawler a memorable victory. Triple H once again kicked out on 3.1, so it looked like he didn't really lose, but he did. And the 1-2-3 got a sizable pop too, which was soon hushed when Trips got his revenge by beating up the terrific trio once again after the bell. What a small, petty man you are, Mr. Levesque, doing a thing like that. I'm tearing up my NXT UK contract in disgust.